Good evening. This is the regular meeting of the Administration and Public Works Committee. Today is Tuesday, April 8th, 2014, and we have a quorum. Could I get a motion for the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of March 24th?
Motion to approve minutes of March 24th, 2014. Second.
It's been moved in second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The first item for consideration would be A1, and that would be the city's payroll through March 23rd, 2014, in the amount of $2,670,255.30.
Move approval.
Second.
It's been moved in second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? A2, I'll just take those first two. The City of Evanston's bills, April 9th, 2014, in the amount of $3,381,156.82, and the city's credit card bills through February 28th, 2014, in the amount of $120,686.35.
Second.
It's been moved in second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, Alderman Burris, would you take A1?
A3.1, I ask for your approval of agreement with CDM Smith for Reservoir and Clearwell Planning Study.
Okay, we're going to have a short, have a presentation, and we also have some citizens that would like to speak on A31. So I'm going to ask Director Stonebeck if he would go ahead first with the presentation.
Thank you, Alderman Holmes and members of the committee, for giving me the opportunity to present information and results from previous studies and our recommendation on how to proceed. We have completed several studies, and I'd like to give a little history on this. You may remember in 2008, when the filter shop expansion was being completed, where there was unexpected damage that occurred to the existing concrete structure in the 1913 and 1923 filter roofs. In 2009, the department raised concerns about the structural integrity of the concrete in several locations of the treatment plant. And we conducted visual inspection of the older filters, and in fact, I believe that several of the council members walked through the filter gallery and saw some of the conditions of the concrete. We did put out the first two studies and that were conducted, and they were done as a result of requests for proposals, and their task was to inspect and evaluate the concrete condition of the different structures that were involved. Subsequent to that, after the second inspection, they found that the roof of the 1934 reservoir was in extremely poor condition, and then that led to some other reports being conducted. So on January 28th, 2013, I came to the City Council, or to the committee and then to the council, to make a recommendation that we have a change order to CTL's contract so that they could come back and inspect the roof a year later. When they did their inspection, they just looked at the concrete inspection. So we hired CDM Smith, who's already under contract with the city, to look at the feasibility of taking the reservoir out of service in the event of a major catastrophe. What would have to be done? Could we still meet water quality treatment requirements and things of those nature? And that's what that report was. And then in November 2013, CTL came back and did their second inspection, and we had CDM join them on that inspection since they were now involved. And so both of those organizations prepared another report. And then additionally, based on the CTL original report, with the structure of the condition of the reservoir roof, and there was some fear that parking cars on the reservoir and adding the snow load would be an issue. So we made Northwestern University aware of that and suggested they may not want to park cars on top of the reservoir. Northwestern University hired Walker their consultant to do an analysis to determine whether Walker felt it was safe for their cars to park on the roof. And then they did a whole nother study. They actually excavated the top of the roof of the reservoir through the asphalt parking lot and onto the roof, and did some report that concluded that, yes, cars could park on top of the reservoir, at least last winter. And then they also made a recommendation for a different type of repair that could be done to the reservoir. We're recommending a comprehensive evaluation of not just that reservoir, but of all the stored water facilities at the water treatment plant. And we feel that that's necessary so that we look at the water plant. Does it have the proper quantity of water being stored there? Do the current reservoir and clear wells provide proper water treatment requirements? And does the quantity of water allow for efficient pump operations? Because what we're pumping through the plant doesn't always match what's pumping out of the plant. And then this report would guide the city and make a recommendation to staff and to the council on how to proceed with the overall life cycle cost replacement of our infrastructure over there, based on industry best management practices, the known age and deterioration of the existing site structures, and then again the life cycle costs to analyze whether you should repair or replace. And we believe that a life cycle cost analysis is very important because it would weigh the short-term repairs against the long-term solutions. So repairing the reservoir, staff acknowledges that, yes, you could get an additional 20 years of life out of that. We don't think that that would be any problem at all. But you're spending money to extend the life for 20 years and then just delaying the inevitable that reservoir would have to be replaced at some point in time. And then compare the long-term financial impacts of building the reservoir now when interest rates from IEPA loans are extremely low, less than 2%, to what is the cost that you might have to pay in 20 years from now. And then it's also, we want to look at the clear wells that are under the 1913 and 1923 facilities, because we believe that they're at the end of their useful life as well. And we have to determine what is the most cost-effective way to address all these issues. This slide indicates the storage that we have at the treatment plant and then also in Evanston. So the north and south standpipe is water that's only really used for the Evanston residential and Evanston retail customers. And there's 12.5 million gallons of storage in that. We have 9.5 million gallons of storage at the treatment facility. But only 3.1 million gallons of that can be claimed by Evanston because of our wholesale water contracts. The other 2/3, it rightfully belongs 1/3 to Skokie and 1/3 to the Northwest Water Commission. So if you add up everything that Evanston has between our standpipes and at the reservoir, we have 15.6, which is approximately appropriate because the rule of thumb is that you should have 2 days worth of storage, and Evanston uses 8 million gallons a day, so we should have 16. But that 15.6 implies also that the storage facilities are filled to the top at the time the event occurred, which they're very seldom filled to the brim, and that you would also be able to drain all the water out of them. Generally, you cannot get the last 12 to 18 inches out of these structures. You lose the capacity of your pumps to be able to pull it out. And again, initially, our intent was to study the concrete at the treatment plant. And the first study was conducted on the 1913 facilities, and we assumed that the 1923 facilities would be in the same condition. We didn't actually study them, but they're 10 years apart, done with the same construction methods and type of concrete that we felt it was appropriate. And that was the first study that was completed in 2010. And then the second study looked at the 1934 reservoir and also the settling basins number 1 and 2 that were constructed in 1948. So our goal was to gather data that would tell us what our overall condition was, and based on that data, be able to make some clear recommendations on how to proceed. The 1913 clear wells are not in very good condition. They were constructed in 1913, put in operation in 1914, and we have significant vertical and horizontal cracking in the walls of these structures. And it's not only on the interior, around the exterior perimeter, but the same type of cracking can be found on the interior walls to separate the clear well from the filters themselves. One thing that I want to note on this is that this study did not look at the reservoir roof. It's only 4 inches thick. It's made of non-air and trained concrete, similar to the reservoir. It's exposed to the freeze-thaw cycle, same as the reservoir is, and we believe that it has the horizontal cracking in it, just like the reservoir roof would have, except we don't park cars on top of this reservoir. So, and it really doesn't have any rebar. The only place it has rebar is underneath the filter building itself, and it extends out beyond that as well. CTL, when they completed their study, their recommendation indicates that they believe that the appropriate way to repair the clear well is to excavate and expose all roof and wall structures, do full thickness crack repairs, and apply a waterproof coating to the exterior surface. However, given the highly invasive nature of such a repair, it's questionable whether such measures would be considered practical. Basically, what they're saying is that we would have to completely expose it and then do work on it. And again, that's something that I, as staff, don't believe is a good recommendation, to do all that work and spend all that money, and we're not sure what the integrity of that structure will be after that. How many more years of service would you get? So that's why we're bringing these concerns forward to the council, so that this is overwhelming to me. I believe it will be overwhelming to the council, and that's why we're recommending that we hire a consultant that can look at all this and help us make a clear decision on how to move forward.
Mrs. Stomach, we have Alderman Verse has a question.
As always, very informative. And you keep saying that you brought this to our attention. This is coming from you and your team, broadly defined by the city, as being an issue. So no one else brought this to your attention. It was you and your team saying, I think there's a problem, we need to address this. Is that what I'm hearing from you? I know you keep saying I, but
Yes.
I know I means
The staff of the Utilities Department.
Okay. So it was in your professional opinion that there were issues, and you're the one that brought it to our attention. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Okay, so no other engineers, no one else is coming to us saying, you need to be doing this. You're the one that's made the choice to go out and get studies done, correct?
That is correct. When we did a cost of service study several years ago, the consultant that did that indicated that when he looked at our capital improvement program and what we anticipated to spend over the next 5 years, he indicated to us, I don't see any money in there for concrete restoration or rehabilitation. And based on their experience, he indicated that we should look at that potentially. So we started putting money in the capital improvement program, and then we needed to start justifying why we were allocating $1 million worth of potential concrete repairs. So we conducted these studies to determine the condition of the concrete structures.
Okay. I just want to make sure we're,
Right.
this
And that
is
original,
your expert opinion.
The firm that conducted the cost of service was Malcolm Perney, and they're the ones that did that said we should look at the concrete. And again, it was emphasized in 2008 when we started doing some construction projects at the water plant, and we had concrete fail that we felt should not during the construction. And then staff looked at the condition of the reservoir, at what was exposed and what we could see, and that alerted us to the condition that we need to do a full study.
Okay, thank you.
The 1934 reservoir, again, I think a lot of people have heard this, and I know that the aldermen have been over, but the roof of this structure is not very good. Rebar is fully exposed at some locations. And CDM, in their review of the CTL report on the concrete condition, indicates that the concrete is 80 years old, the reservoir being built in 34, and that the average life of concrete is 100 years. And although the walls and the floor are good at this point, they feel that that this concrete will continue to deteriorate, and probably at a rapid rate as the concrete ages. And again, these structures are exposed to high humidity all the time, and there's chlorine in there as well. So that's not a very friendly environment for these types of structures. And again, there's a recommendation on how to repair the structure that would give us 20 years life. This would indicate that the rest of it could last 20 years, but the overall question is that the right procedure to move forward with, or should we be looking at an overall picture? And that's why staff is recommending a study to help guide staff and the city council in making the hard decisions on how to proceed. And with that, I open it up for any additional questions.
Can we hold those until we hear from the citizens, if you don't mind? Okay, well, we're going to hold our questions, and can we get the lights back, Dave?
Sure.
We have 3 people that want to speak. Mr. Risky, Mr. Lannon, and Barbara Jane. In that order.
The problem with what's gone on
Mr.
here...
Risky, if you don't mind, would you...
Jeanette Risky,
name?
2784 Sheridan.
Thank you.
The problem what's gone on here is Mr. Stonebeck keeps giving a different story over time. He's getting better at it, of course, because he's being put up more, questions keep coming. But bottom line is, the issue that I have is there's politics here involved with this. This tank sits on Northwestern's property, and that is another problem. Tonight you may not have a quorum on this issue. You may have a quorum for the other items. But because the tank sits on Northwestern's property, it is an issue because those options suggest moving it, and that's a financial interest to Northwestern. So that's one issue. But the mayor, in her statement, said, basically, there's no debate about this. We need a new tank. Well, CDM reports that I looked at, they basically said we don't need any more reservoir capacity. So basically, and that's expanding the plant. So I mean, I hear these statements by Mr. Stonebeck, but some of this doesn't match up with what's in the report. And I have a problem with that because this is what I keep saying here. It keeps happening when there's politics involved. We keep on saying things to get what we want. And I'm tired of that, really, as a taxpayer. Because, as you know, this is a 20% water bill increase to move this tank off that site and move it somewhere else. And it may be more. Because the other problem is, yes, he wants a report. They haven't done any real estimates to the cost of this thing. The estimates are very vague. And the other issue is, they keep saying more storage capacity to sell water. Well, the problem is you have no water sale contracts, and you have millions of dollars to renovate the plant to sell water, supposedly. So these are some of the questions that I believe are a problem here. I mean, Mr. Stonebeck quoted a report in here which was on the city website. It's the final thing from CDM. Now, that report is a draft report on the city website. Unless there's a new copy I'd like to see. I have problems with that draft report and some of the things the engineer said. They don't make sense to me. Okay, I have a master's in structural engineering from the University of Michigan. I'm a licensed architect, and I've worked 35 years in the field of renovations and doing things to buildings and other things. So I read that report, and I had some problems with some of the technical language. And I believe the engineer was told to make it look worse than it is. And also, by the way, that engineer said 20 to 30 years life. So he's saying something that contradicts what Mr. Stonebeck said, actually, in the draft report. My issue is taxpayer money, period. The issue is the taxpayers of this community should not be saddled with something that's so expensive. And the other issue that I have here is staff can do these simple financial analyses. And why aren't they doing them to show you? You can look at this at $3 million, and you can look at this at $30 million, and you can run financial numbers and come up with some simple numbers. Why hasn't Mr. Stonebeck done this? Just to show some feasibility. So why should we spend $86,000 at this point? The other problem I'm having with everything done so far, the request for proposal does not match basically what the memo he gave City Council is. They do not match. There's things on there that absolutely do not match. There's one is talking about clear wells, and the other one's talking about the reservoir. The items don't match. So I'm a little confused what he's saying, that we're studying. And I mean, you can go look at this stuff. This stuff is all on the city website. I realize you council members should not be reading this, but he has a responsibility to create accurate information. And this stuff is there. Anyone can read all this stuff. Now, some people are saying to me this is highly technical and this and that. No, it's not highly technical to read some of this stuff. You can read it, and what does it say? It says, we don't need a new tank because of storage capacity. It says that in the CDM reports. You can go to that paragraph and find it. And that's increasing the water plant capacity. So, I mean, as a taxpayer, I have a problem with all this. And this is the issue. And the whole Clearwell issue, this has been going on for 5 years or whatever. Well, why wasn't this brought up much earlier and discussed? Why is it coming up now anyway? I'm just curious. I mean, I haven't had time to look at the Clearwell reports to look at any of that because this is new information to me, at least. It was never presented to the public at any point. Maybe it was presented as a passing thing, but now it's all coming out with the clear wells. I'm not saying there's not a problem in those clear wells, but what I am saying is they're adding things to this to say, oh, it's a comprehensive study. Well, maybe not at this point. But I really think there's misinformation here. I don't think you have a quorum tonight to discuss this because there is financial interest to Northwestern University here. And that's a fact. If that tank goes off their property, as one of the options, some of the options are suggesting, that's a big financial advantage to Northwestern to take that site. So I think that you may not have a quorum to move this forward anyway, because I don't know the rules and procedures here, but I don't know that you can move this on to City Council. I don't know if that's something I don't understand or know. I agree. I don't have that knowledge, but that is a problem. So,
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Alderman Burris, you want to
Yes.
Before-
Mr. Risky is, as usual, has some sort of conspiracy theory happening with Mr. Stonebeck, and I take offense to making allegations against Mr. Stonebeck, who has only done his due diligence and is giving us the information he needs to. So I just want it on the record as saying I'm highly offended by those allegations against one of our employees, and I think, as a legal department, need to start putting these down when Mr. Risky says these kind of things about our staff, because I'm not sure when it goes over into criminal behavior of saying something illegal. I'm not an attorney, but he does it regularly with Mr. Bobkowitz as well, and it really needs to stop at some point, because it is not fair to our staff. So, thank you.
Thank you. All right, next speaker.
Thank you, Chairman. Person Holmes. My name is Richard Lanyon. I reside at 1019 Milford Street. I'm also chairman of the Evanston Utility Commission. I'm speaking on behalf of the Utility Commission and in favor of agenda item A 3.1. We believe this will be money well spent to integrate all of the prior studies and provide guidance to the city on the replacement of this vital infrastructure. The ability to have a sound storage of water for outage periods is essential to a well-operated water system. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. James?
Good evening. My name is Barbara Janes. I live at 802 Colfax Street. I am here tonight to urge you not to spend $86,000 on the unnecessary study on the water reservoir. We do not need any more studies. We have 3 studies that clearly state that the only thing that needs to be done is repair the roof of the present water reservoir. And the final report says that we can do this cheaper than the other 2 studies. What more information do we need? Fix the roof and be done. May I remind you that that the 1934 agreement with Northwestern that allowed the water reservoir to be located on Northwestern's property is in perpetuity. In return, we gave Northwestern our beach at the end of Lincoln Street and another city street that goes through the university. That agreement must be honored by all parties. One of the options in the proposed study lists one of the options as moving the reservoir to Leahy Park. How could anyone even conceive that this would be reasonable? Leahy Park is one of the most heavily used parks in our city, which is already underparked. The rec department runs filled to capacity summer sports camps at Leahy. It is used by numerous sports teams. The tennis courts are in demand, and the playground is used by all the neighborhood children. Since this is spring break, those families are not here in droves, and I think probably some of your own council members are also on spring break. This option is totally unacceptable, and Leahy, if you insist on proceeding with this option, Leahy should be taken out of the list under consideration. The mayor has said that the water tank needs replacement. I have seen no study that supports this statement. I have seen a few studies dealing with the possibility of selling water to more communities, such as Niles, Glenview, The city manager has said in public meetings that these communities are doing their due diligence, but have not declared their intent to actually buy water from Evanston. I question whether these municipalities are likely to undertake the tens to hundreds of millions of dollars it would cost to build new water pipes to carry the water to those residents. We don't need to spend any more of our money until we know that the idea of selling water to other towns is even realistic. Even if they do express interest, there needs to be a lot more public discussion as to whether and how Evanston should accomplish this goal. It feels like the city keeps funding studies until the studies say what they want it to say. And this may seem frivolous, but to me personally, it's important. I have been trying to get a decent fence at the dog beach so dogs are kept safe, and use some of that $86,000 to give us a decent fence. The dog beach is a profit center for the city, and we deserve at least a decent and durable fence that keeps our dogs safe. I urge you not to fund the study, but if you insist on going on, take Leahy out of the options. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes public comments. Alderman Rainey.
Alderman Holmes, I'm going to support this because I do believe it's going to bring into question all of the recommendations from all the previous studies, and I think that it's time to move on and finally get a recommendation to the council that we can support and move ahead to take care of whatever problems exist at the reservoir. So I'm going to move that we send this to the council without a recommendation because I do believe that Alderman Burris is going to abstain. Are you not?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. All right.
Because my question is, actually my question is about...
Could I just finish?
Yeah.
If she is going to abstain, there is no issue with taking it to the council without a recommendation. We've done that many, many times, even when there is a no vote. But if you're going to, you might want to explain yourself.
Right. Yeah, my question was to Mr. Stonebeck. Did Northwestern University ask you to move the tank? And if they did, that's a different story.
No, they have not.
Okay.
I believe that Evanston Water Treatment will always have a reservoir on Northwestern property in perpetuity because we were given so many square feet to be allowed on their property. If the decision is made to replace it, the shape of it may be different, but I would strongly urge that it be exactly the same square footage as we currently have.
Okay. No, just the issues that have been raised, and there was a suggestion that there was some sort of financial benefit, and Mr. Stonebeck, has anyone given you money? Has they said they would give you money if you move the reservoir? any such thing has happened that you have been accused of, or anyone else on the council has been accused of, has that happened?
No.
And Alderman Burris, I was going to ask our legal opinion that I didn't think that this had anything to do with Northwestern in terms of the study, and there would be no reason for you not to be able to vote.
Yes.
But we
I
did-
would agree. Michelle Mason Cup from the Law Department. I would agree with Alderman Burris's conclusion. You do not need to recuse yourself.
Thank you.
That's what I thought. Okay. So it has been moved. We need a second.
I'm moving. Would you like to?
Okay, it's been moved in second, and I'm certainly supporting it. As do I like spending the money? Absolutely not. I wish we didn't have to, but I think that if our staff is telling us that they need this to make a decision, then I am certainly going to have to support it. Not because of water sales, but because think about our own Evanston water, our own citizens. I think that we have to think beyond 20 years in terms of trying to preserve our water system here in the city. So, all in favor? Any opposed? So, thank you. Alderman Rainey, will you take A 3.2?
Madam Chair, I move approval of the purchase of 312 trees and planting services for 150 trees from Suburban Tree Consortium in the amount of $77,536.76. Funding for the purchase is from two sources. One is the Park and Forestry Maintenance Account, with a budget of $150,300 for both spring and fall planting, and the new Replant Express program, which allows Evanston residents to pay $250, the cost of the tree plus delivery, to be added to the planting list immediately.
Second.
It's been moved in second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, moving right along to A 3.3, approval of the contract with the Sunrise Tree Service Company for 2014 Dutch Elm Injection Program. The staff recommends the City Council authorize the city manager to execute a contract in the amount of $761,745 with Sun Tree Service Company for the 2014 Dutch Elm Disease Control Program.
Second.
It's been moved in second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
A 3.4, I move approval of the contract extension with Golf Mill Ford Incorporated for Ford Original Equipment Manufacturer for parts in the amount of $88,500.
Second.
Second.
It's been moved in second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Next, Madam Chair, A 3.5, I move that we recommend to the council to authorize the manager to execute an agreement for a one-year contract extension for the purchase of 500 tons of modified hot mix asphalt at a cost of $52 a ton, and 300 tons of modified hot mix binder at the cost of $44 per ton, with Arrow Road Construction doing business as Healy Asphalt for fiscal year 2014 for a total cost of $39,200.
Second.
It's been moved in second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. A 3.6, approval of purchase of Davis Street streetscape furniture from Landscape Forms in the amount of $51,006. This funding is provided by from the Washington National TIF.
Second.
Okay. It's been moved in second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
A4, I ask your approval of Resolution 14-R-14, authorizing for the city manager to negotiate and execute residential lease for 631 Howard Street, Unit 2. And I'll do A5 as well. I also
Okay.
ask your approval of A5, Resolution 22-R-14, authorization for the city manager to negotiate and execute a residential lease for 631 Howard Street, Unit 1.
Second.
All right. It's been moved in second. All in favor?
Aye.
For A4 and A5.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. On
Madam
A6.
Chair, could I just make a comment about that?
Absolutely.
You're moving so quickly.
I know.
You're so efficient. I just wanted to say that this is one of the buildings on Howard Street that the city purchased for redevelopment, and it is now fully occupied, not to mention that it is just fully successful, and we're just thrilled to have the new tenant. This is a renewal lease for the second floor unit and a new lease for the first floor unit, or actually the first unit, residential unit.
Fantastic. Alderman Rainey, before you do A6, there's going to be a presentation, I
Okay.
believe. Are they here? Okay.
Okay. So I should wait, or should
Yeah,
I
let's-
introduce it?
Well, you can go ahead and make the motion.
Okay,
and
just
then
so
we'll-
people know what we're talking
Absolutely.
about. All right, A6, I just lost it. Okay, A6 is Resolution 13R14. This resolution will authorize the city manager to execute a license agreement with Caravelli Montessori School for use of a portion of Curry Park to locate temporary mobile classrooms for a 10-month period.
Would it be possible to move the next matter as well, because they're both Caravalli matters?
I will.
Yeah.
I will.
Well, no, I don't think we can do A8 in this. We can do
right.
A6 and A7.
A6 and A7, so go ahead,
So I
Alderman.
can do A7, okay. Resolution 20R14, approval of this resolution will authorize the manager to execute an easement agreement with Caravelli Montessori School to provide for easements for the benefit of Caravelli on the, on and under the city parks property commonly known as Curry Park.
Okay.
And I found out today that Curry is spelled Currey, which I thought looked very strange.
It is. Good evening.
So is there a second?
Second.
Okay.
So sorry. Good evening. I'm Robin McLeod-Springer. I'm the head of school at Caravalli Montessori School. And this is our attorney, Steve Friedland, who will be making the presentation.
Could you pull this up so it'll broadcast there?
Absolutely. I did just briefly want to thank everyone at the City of Evanston who have been working so diligently with us on this. Steve?
Great. Thank you very much. Steve Friedland with the law firm of Applegate and Thorne Thompson, representing Caravalli School. And interestingly enough, one of the last changes to the document was correcting the spelling of Curry Park. I think it was our last edit. Just to give you a quick reminder, in 2010, Caravalli Montessori purchased the building in a transaction with the City of Evanston, and they previously had been leasing the building and the land under it for a number of years. And the purpose of that was to do a renovation that included taking down what is the existing annex behind this building and putting up a new property. And what that transaction did, and both of the resolutions before you deal with this renovation, which we're about to undertake, is we subdivided the land, which was Curry Park. If I've got a pointer here, I don't know that I do. Do I? Yes. All of this was city-owned land, and what was conveyed to Caravalli was a footprint, basically, of its building, which we currently own. This is a little better, easier drawing for you to see, and what we're planning on doing is tearing down the existing annex, which sits right here, and rebuilding it with a structure that this is the existing annex, and rebuilding a structure basically in its place to create a more efficient internal structure for the school. All of that was sort of part and parcel of our 2010 transaction, but we're proceeding now to go forward with the construction. And both of the matters before you deal with that construction. The first matter that is before you is a license agreement. While the project is being constructed, we are going to need to place a couple of exterior mobile classrooms on the park. That's what the license is for. And in order to complete the construction, we are going to need some easements under Curry Park. As you can imagine from that drawing that you saw or from the plat, our property line is our building line. And in fact, in 2010, we received certain easements from the city. As we've gone forward with the construction planning, we've realized there are some additional easements we need. Interestingly enough, they're basically in the same place, and I'll show you those in a moment. These are just renderings of this is the alley view of the new addition. The first, I'll speak to the easements first, just because that's how I've set them up, even though the license is your first item on your agenda. One easement is to have geothermal, which is part of the construction of the building. We're looking to get LEED certification. And as part of the 2010 easement grant, we received an easement from the city for stormwater retention. This geothermal easement is going to go in that same location. So we're not taking up any additional land. It's the geothermal goes underneath the stormwater. This is the stormwater easement, which again, there will be a stormwater vault that will exist under what is currently the basketball courts. And as you may be aware, the city's going through a process of looking to redesign Curry Park once our construction is complete. And again, to remind you, in 2010, not only did we buy the land from the city, but we paid $200,000 toward the city's reconstruction of Curry Park, and that money has been sitting in escrow since 2010. The third easement is to put in a new water line, which actually exists in this location, but we felt it was appropriate to call it out as an easement, so it's clearly noted in the public records. But there is a water line which goes from Hinman into the building right now. We're simply making it a larger water line based on the discussions we've had with city staff. The last easement, and this is a confusing drawing, which I promise you for the recorded version of this document will look a little simpler, but for purposes of explaining it, this is the construction easement that we're requesting. We're planning on starting our construction in June, and when we do, we will put up a fence around this crosshatched area in order to tear down the existing annex and do the underground utility work. So the stormwater here, the geothermal here, the water line will be here, but that won't require really, we're actually looking at doing that through boring through from the road. Our hope is not to disturb the existing park there. We will occupy this area during that construction work through the end of the summer, through August, at which point the fence line will change. We'll go a little further north, and these two mobile classrooms will be placed on site, which will be authorized pursuant to the license agreement if you approve that. And we will then have this area through construction end, which will be August of 2015, at which point the park will be restored, and, well, it will be regraded, and then the city will come in and do its work to do a full restoration of the park. I think that's it. If you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer them.
Hi, and I can't remember from when this was originally done. What was the parking discussion for your staff and teachers? Is there parking off-site on this, or what was the agreement around parking? Does anybody?
No, I mean, we did get some zoning approvals at the time of the transfer because we had a footprint of the addition, and in some cases almost have a zero lot line setback. So we got certain variations from the ZBA, but there's no parking requirement on site because it predates its pre-existing use.
And there's a lot of street parking in that area.
Well, actually, I don't have an issue with any of it. It's more of that actually a few people that work at Caravelli are having issues with parking over there, and we may need to talk about this with the city staff because one teacher in particular is getting tickets over and over again, and it's a problem. So something that we may want to think about as you're expanding as well. I find it to be concerning that Caravelli is not looking out for their staff and faculty. They're getting tickets regularly, so that might be something to explore as you're doing this and taking up even more space.
We're not actually expanding in terms.
I was going to say, it's not an expansion.
It's not an expansion, just want to make that.
Okay, well,
Is that
Yours-
a parking district? Is
yeah, I mean, they're not,
Inman there, is that a parking district?
I don't believe so. And the only reason why I'm saying that is that it's bringing back lots of memories, because that particular structure that you're getting ready to take down was the first site of the first Family Focus Center. So we opened that in 1976. So I'm very familiar with the area. And there was always this parking on Hinman. I don't know where they're parking to get tickets, because unless they put, because we put meters a lot of places now. But on Dempster,
yeah.
west of I'm thinking Hinman, Judson. There would be parking meters there.
What we get into, the trouble comes with during winter parking. So anytime there's either street cleaning or snow, it's the snow emergencies, or, and then you get into the 2-hour parking thing. So a lot of our staff does take public transportation, but for some people,
Particularly people that are disabled are having a huge issue with this, and it ends up coming back to their alderman. And so it should be something that we think about as you're, doing all of this, to working with our parking people on, or doing something for your staff that are disabled.
we have
do
actually,
that.
we continue to seek resolutions for that. So.
Yeah, it would be great if there was a permanent resolution for it, because it keeps coming up every 6 months.
Thanks.
Oh, okay, you already, all right. Okay, it's been moved, is there, unseconded? No other questions, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Then we go to A8, Ordinance 51-0-14, approving and authorizing revenue bonds and related matters thereto for Caravelli's financing, conduct financing. You going to address that? Alderman Rainey, do you want to speak before my? Okay.
Yeah, I wanted, I'm
He's going to,
hoping that
Marty's
you
going to
would
address
share
it,
with the community what this is
what this
all about.
means.
Good evening. Marty Lyons, Assistant City Manager, Chief Financial Officer, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Tonight, what we're looking at is two issues. One is a refinancing of the original bonds, similar to what we do. At this point in time, interest rates are favorable that they could refinance and get a lower interest rate, so that's not an issue of more debt. However, what Caravelli is looking at doing is more work on their structure, and that is the second amount. And I'm sorry, I'm going to just go take a look at my own. I believe that was 2.8 or 2.9 million. Thank you. $2.93 million for new revenue. Again, for the committee and members of the public, this is a conduit financing, and that means that the revenue bonds being issued have the city's name on them, but they are solely the responsible of Caravelli. There is absolutely no liability for the city, and I want to differentiate this from situations where a city might look at forming its own LLC or other agency to issue a revenue bond, similar to what we looked at for Crown, where there really wouldn't be much distance between us and the limited liability corporation. In this case, totally separate institutions. They are solely responsible for that, and we also will have our own bond counsel, Chapman and Cutler, for the final bond ordinance on the 28th. Their opinion will also be attached in the entire bond documents that This is the type of financing, so it's not a liability of the city. This allows Caravali to issue the debt at slightly less costs than going through the Illinois Financing Authority, which has higher fees associated with them.
Alderman Rainey?
What about fees? Do they pay the fees? Do we pay?
Yes, they are paying Chapman and Cutler's fees.
And are these taxable or non-taxable bonds?
These are non-taxable, I believe. So they're tax exempt bonds.
Okay. Any,
Would they be tax exempt if they weren't piggybacking on?
They could still do tax exempt. That really goes to the use. So as long as their use, and Janet, you're the bond counsel, you could also speak to this, but as long as the use is for a tax exempt purpose, for instance, when we did the parking deck for Sherman, some was taxable, some was not. So our part of the parking deck was tax exempt, but the condominium part was taxable, even though we did the whole issue.
right. Is that, any other questions? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
This is for introduction.
It is, I'm sorry, yes, it is for introduction.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. A9, ordinance 41-0-14, amending the city code to establish a four-way stop control at the intersection of Broadway Avenue and Jinx Street. Move approval.
Second.
It's been moved in second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
A10, I ask.
A10, Alderman Burris, I'm sorry, A10 is going to be removed from the agenda tonight.
Okay.
We've been asked to remove it for tonight, so can you just go to A11?
Okay, they're not linked, sorry.
No,
All right, thank
A10, and then just so you'll know, when we get to it, A15 is also removed for tonight.
A15? Mm-hmm. Thank you. At A11, I ask for your approval of ordinance 43-0-14, decreasing the number of Class C liquor licenses for La Machina, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, Cafe? Thank you. At 1620 Orrington Avenue.
Second. It's been moved in second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Do the next
We
one.
want to do 12?
A12, I ask your approval of ordinance 44-0-14, increasing the number of Class C1 liquor licenses for, thank you, Cafe at 1620 Orrington Avenue.
Okay. It's been moved in second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
You say it much nicer than I do.
Yeah. I hope I can say it.
Next is A13, ordinance 45014, which amends the Evanston City Code 2012 to decrease the number of authorized Class I liquor licenses from 1 to 0 due to issuance of an upgraded Class D liquor license to Ward 8 LLC, doing business as Ward 8 at 629 Howard Street. This is for introduction. Second. And I'll do the next one. Madam Chair.
A14, please.
Ordinance 46014 amends the Evanston City Code of 2012 to increase the number of authorized Class D liquor licenses from 49 to 50 to permit issuance to Ward 8 LLC, doing business as Ward 8, 629 Howard Street, for introduction.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved in second. All in favor?
Aye.
So A11 through 14 are all for introduction tonight, okay? Okay, A16, ordinance 40-0-14, recognizing the secession of the Evanston Township and codifying the city's assumption of the duties and obligations of the Evanston Township.
Second.
It's been moved in second. That's going to be for introduction tonight. I think the city manager wants to speak to that.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Alderman Rainey.
I would like to know if this is, in this provision, is this where we hire a look-alike tax assessor, property tax assessor, to replace the services of Bonnie Wilson's department.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, what this is moving the budgets really as is from the township to the city. If the
Assumptions of
council
duties
wishes
and
to make a change, I have stated before that my plan is to move forward with bringing on 3 of the general assistant staff members and then 1 staff member from the assessor side. That position is not currently filled. I've also said I don't believe this is a full-time position. But we still need to have someone performing those duties at least a portion of the time, and we'll monitor this closely during the balance of the fiscal year. We'll come back to the council with the 2015 budget. If indeed it's not a full-time position, we'll make those adjustments then. But I think, especially given the time of year, it's important for us to continue to provide that service, and I will ensure to the council that the person is not only qualified that we select, but also is fully occupied throughout the year.
Alderman Rainey?
Madam Chair, I really don't have any doubt that a person we hired would be qualified. I just don't believe we should hire anybody, and therefore I would move to delete that piece of this from this ordinance. I believe wholeheartedly that every obligation we have to township clients should be fulfilled. I do not think that we need to be providing tax assistance as the city of Evanston when there's like 10 other taxing bodies on our tax bill. I don't believe this is a position that anybody who voted on this to eliminate the township had any idea was going to be filled. I think it is a waste of our money. It's a duplicative service of the county commissioner Suffredin's office, and I really oppose that. So I'm going to move that this be amended to delete the hiring of that person.
And Madam Chair, members of the committee, that's not a part of the ordinance. If the committee and the council wishes to direct me to do that under a separate motion.
It's a concept, though. It's a concept that you're including in this provision. It's all part of it. You just spoke to it. It comes up every single time that it's an important position that we have to fill, that's not filled currently, and that you're going to fill it. You're going to keep on the 3 people in the township office, and you're going to hire a person to handle the tax appeal information.
I'm not sure, Alderman Rainey, if this is a time for the discussion, but I thought we've also had discussions where we talked about being able to provide some of the services of the assessor's office to the residents. So, I mean, that was discussed as well. So I don't know how we would do that without having someone
So
available.
let's talk about what's the point of eliminating the township if every single duty is going to be assumed by the city. I mean, I don't, it's all it is ink on the tax bill. I mean,
And Madam Chair, members of the committee, we have been authorized by the Illinois General Assembly, assuming that the election results are certified by the Cook County Clerk, to assume the role of the Evanston Township Assessor with the city. When the council asked for a plan back in October, I presented a plan, and included in that was 1 position. Currently budgeted, there are 3 positions, including the elected assessor. I believe that we need to continue to provide the property tax assessment assistance. I do not believe we needed a full-time elected official and 2 additional full-time staff members to do that. So we are have eliminated the elected official and eliminating 1 of the 2 full-time staff members. I've also indicated that I don't believe the role of this is a seasonal role largely, and so there'll be other work that's done. Again, the council asked for a plan back in October. That was all part of the plan. If the council wishes to make adjustments.
This is something I'm not just coming to this. It's not a knee-jerk reaction. I think it's absolutely a waste of our money, and I have no problem with us in some way supporting the commissioner's office and helping to finance or subsidize a part-time addition to his office at the time when, reassessments take place or tax bills come out. I have no problem with that. In fact, I think it's a very good idea. It relieves us of having to deal with a pension. It has to do with us not having to deal with insurance. It has to do with not dealing with a whole boatload of issues. And I'm going to really encourage my colleagues to give some thought to that. And I am sure Commissioner Suffredin would appreciate that. And we would be no worse off.
And again, Madam Chair, members of the committee, in my time as the township supervisor, I've gotten to learn the role of the assessor function, and I've really come to appreciate the vital role that service plays. Again, I think the voters of Evanston Township have said perhaps do it in a more efficient way. I don't know in my opinion, I think we need to continue to do it. Madam Chair, what I would suggest is that if the ordinance is introduced, we can work with the legal department on appropriate language. It would come back on April 28th for action, and if the council wishes to insert language directing that position not be filled, then we'll have the appropriate language. But I would ask for the ability to do that and come back with the proper language.
I don't care. I'm going to oppose it to the end. And I'm going to encourage my colleagues, and I will talk to Commissioner Suffredin and see how he feels about it. I do not think the city needs to take on the obligation of another pension, another insurance, family insurance, individual insurance, pension, the whole 9 yards. And, all that employee has to do is fall off a chair, and then we get sued by another employee. We're just adding another problem to our staff, and we don't need it. It's ridiculous. And I will, I agree, I can fight it out on the council floor.
And we'll have language. Ms. Baker-Scott will help with appropriate language. We'll come back on the 28th with the amendment.
All right, it's been moved and second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
No.
No, so it's 2-1. All right, Alderman Burst, will you take the last one?
A17, I move approval 52-0-14, creating the City of Evanston General Assistance Fund and defining other city duties and obligations.
Okay, second. I don't see no lights. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay. That concludes our agenda for this evening.